Speaker.
I call to your oath, Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, on Monday night, 1,500 or so New Zealanders gathered at a public meeting in the Auckland Town Hall, coming together in opposition to this bill. I wasn't there, but that doesn't mean that the issues raised around the issues and concerns raised have not been expressed already by the Māori Party. Mr. Speaker, I understand that speakers at that event talked about this bill as a threat to fundamental freedom. I'm told that one of the challenges put to the hui, aside from digs at Dr. Rodney Harrison QC, was that, according to him, that this bill, at least led the nation, was sleepwalking into a surveillance society. That was his quote from his speech. Today, Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party stands, as we have at every single stage of this bill, to oppose the virtual nightmare in its absolute entirety. Mr. Speaker, while the crowd was gathered in Auckland, I was with representatives of whānau Hapuiwi at Tūrangawaewae, and I know that you arrived there just not long after I arrived, supporting them at the famous, and I suppose the celebration of the Koroneihana, the coronation of King Ituheitia for his 7th year. And while just there for a second, just to acknowledge the incredible organisation, the devoted commitment and inspirational momentum that this hui represents to the heart and soul of tangata whenua. If you didn't know, Mr. Speaker, since 1858, the Kingitanga, the King movement, has stood strong to survive intense challenges, wars, land confiscation, poverty and destitution. It has endured 2 major global conflicts and several bouts of severe economic crisis. Mr. Speaker, it's the Māori Party's submission that the introduction of mass surveillance must surely be seen as yet another injustice that our iwi have had to withstand. Tangata whenua, sir, today are saying in this House that we will never ever agree to submit to surveillance by the government spy agencies. Each of our iwi have horrendous stories to tell of the experiences that we have been put through in the name of colonial rule. Sir, I've listened to what Tūhoe leader Tamati Kruger said about the impact of this bill. Tamati told the nation that Tūhoe knows all too well about injustice resulting from Crown suspicion, as highlighted by their fraught historic relationship. It was his advice that extending the powers of the GSP will only fuel the Crown's suspicion of New Zealanders and contribute to further injustices. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, according to Tamati, if the bill is made law, Tūhoe, and by default, all other iwi must find ways of protecting itself by being vigilant that its privacy is no longer respected. Mr. Speaker, I have seen logs of surveillance on innocent Tūhoe people. The Tūhoe raids is a blight on New Zealand society. Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party has put out there that from the moment that this bill was floated, that we will oppose the legislation because it is intrusive, it lacks justification for what we believe is an extraordinary extension of their powers. This is absolutely consistent with our vigilant opposition to all of the other variations of legislation that have paved the way to this bill. In 2011, we opposed the Video Camera Surveillance Temporary Measures Bill, which was being pushed through under urgency, and called for all of our constituents and the public to make submissions. Such an issue of importance, and yet New Zealanders were given 24 hours to have their say. We also opposed the Terrorism Suppression Amendment Act 2007, introduced by Labour, which was passed post-Operation 8 to justify and validate the actions of the police during Operation 8. The Māori Party believes that this latest bill is inconsistent with the rights of freedom of expression and freedom from unreasonable search or seizure under our law, and will merely validate actions like those of Operation 8, where some police actions were also deemed illegal. Mr. Speaker, as this House knows full well, the Independent Police Conduct Authority report on Operation 8 found in some areas police had acted, quote, unlawfully, unjustifiably and unreasonably during those raids. All that this bill does is to increase the powers of the GCSB, and it makes it easier to spy on New Zealanders. Sir, last year we opposed the search and surveillance bill for similar reasons, because we believed that the search powers vested in police officers under the bill were too broad, and were concerned that they did not require a search warrant. That bill allowed more government agencies to carry out surveillance operations, changed the right to silence, and allowed judges to decide whether journalists can protect their sources or not. Earlier this year, sir, the Kitteridge report revealed that 88 New Zealand citizens were subjected to surveillance by the GCSB. It is in the interest of transparency that the Māori Party requested that these names be revealed. However, sir, this request was declined. And I think this is one of the key issues of concern for all of us in the Māori Party, and indeed for Māoridom generally. Why, sir, on earth would Māori believe that the state, through its agencies, would act honourably when the history suggests otherwise is a little bit beyond me? I want to conclude this debate by referring to an issue I spoke of earlier at the second reading debate, and that was the claims made in 2004 in the newspaper article by Anthony Hubbard and Nikki Haga. Their claims were that SIS spies were investigating Māori activists, perhaps myself and others, and Māori in general, including the Māori Party. The articles revealed the campaign-coded Operation Leaf, in which the SIS were told to gather intelligence on internal iwi business negotiations, finances and Treaty of Waitangi claims, as well as intertribal communications. The article went further to suggest that agents were instructed to watch for dirt on Māori leaders, and that computer geeks had been hired to plant bugs in the computers of Māori organisations. I think it is important, sir, to further describe the context of the time. These were the heydays of Don Brash and his infamous Orewa tirade attacking special treatment for Māori. My co-leader Tariana Tulia crossed the floor in abject opposition to the Foreshore and Seabed Bill. The mighty Māori Party was born and took 4 seats at the 2005 election. And then, to cap it off, an ancient charge of sedition was taken out by Labour against Tim Selwyn, a young man accused of throwing an axe through Helen Clark's electoral office in protest to the Foreshore and Seabed Bill. Mr. Speaker, Selwyn was later charged under the Crime Acts for the act of sedition, defined as, quote, speech, writing or behaviour intended to encourage rebellion or resistance against the government. So, Selwyn was charged for the publication of a pamphlet, his crime being the opportunity to incite, procure and encourage violence, lawlessness or disorder through the publication of that said leaflet. So it was the first prosecution for sedition in at least 75 years and drew considerable controversy. Mr. Speaker, I take us back to that history less than a decade ago, because the Māori Party has an extremely powerful objection to any such power of the state. We believe that all these acts do is to invite abuse of our right to freedom of speech. So, to conclude, let me put 2 facts on the record. Firstly, as a result of the extreme agitation in Māori communities about Operation Leaf, Tariana Turia called for an independent inquiry, writing to the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security. His statement at the time was that an inquiry was needed as New Zealanders take for granted that our freedom to live in an open democracy is a basic standard of living for our nation. In April 2005, the official investigation overseen by Justice Paul Niza concluded that there was nothing to suggest that the allegations around Operation Leaf were true, and the SIS director of the time, Richard Woods, assured Mrs. Turia that there was no cause for concern. The second development was that of the crime of sedition, inciting insurrection against the state. This was eventually thrown out by the Parliament in October 2007 by an overwhelming majority of 114 to 7. The only party to vote against was, ironically, New Zealand First. So, this history is a vital backdrop for the GCSB bill that we're debating today. We do not need to waste time on fixing something that is not worth salvaging. It was for that reason that we came out yesterday and declared a universal opposition to amendments put up by parties. We will never contribute to an environment in which surveillance and a siege mentality is overall. We must be free to associate with whom we want, wherever we want, whenever we want. This bill threatens our basic human rights. It is invasive, intrusive, and we will never support it.
I understand the next call is a split call. The Honourable David Parker.
And a 1 minute bell, sir.
Yes, 1 minute bell.